You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. If you spent much time on social media here in Washington, you've likely seen a headline like this one.
Office workers secretly waiting for landing seaplane to decapitate paddleboarder.
That gem comes from The Needling, which describes itself as Seattle's only real fake news. It's the comedy creation of Lex Vaughn, the site's founder and editor since 2018. Longevity enough to lampoon 2 presidential elections. Tomorrow night, she'll be at SIFF Cinema Downtown as part of its Talking Pictures series. Vaughn has chosen to screen and discuss Anchorman, the Legend of Ron Burgundy. And today, I'm pleased to have her here to talk about how she came to be Seattle's fake news maven, as well as what it means to do satire in 2025. Lex Vaughn, thanks for being in studio. It's great to meet you and have you in.
Thanks for having me.
So one of your very first headlines that even reached me, because I think you guys launched while I was still living in Los Angeles, was Fremont troll priced out of Fremont moves to Tukwila. That was a great one, all-time classic. Do you have favorite headlines or favorite approaches from recent history of The Needling?
Oh my gosh, it's so hard for me to call them out like right off the top of my head because it's like I got to phrase them just right. But that one is a classic. That one really kicked us off. It was one of the first pieces we ran, and yeah, like it was very clear how much Seattle wanted satire because that thing blew up, and it really has just continued to be popular, and just grown every year. Because like every time people hear about it, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing."
Yeah, I have to read a couple from right now. That's we're talking on a Friday, and some of your top headlines right now are Governor Ferguson's austerity cuts force Washington State ferry passengers to swim the last 30 feet to shore. It's a good one. The images, really. How do you source your? Do you have a passion for graphic design or for Photoshop?
I do all the images, and I am like technically an amateur, but then also have been using Photoshop since high school. So it has been about 20 years of Photoshop.
Okay, the other one that I'm enjoying right now is desperate Bruce Harrell shows progressive bona fides at Denny Blaine Nude Beach.
We'll let you imagine it all.
You can imagine the image that is with that article. But you're tapping into something there that, it's an underlying awareness of the news, obviously, that some people are alleging that in collaborating with progressives right now, Bruce Harrell is trying too hard, basically, to prove that he is left on the spectrum. And some people who are backing Katie Wilson's campaign would say he's being kind of a false progressive. So you have to have real understanding of the news to kind of get this and to also write these headlines.
Yeah.
Like, can you talk about your process?
That it is a little bit of a struggle to balance, like, what are people aware of? Because it's like there are some jokes where I'm like, I know this is a good joke about this news item, but how many people are aware of this news item?
This is too inside baseball.
So sometimes I have to wait for more people to, get informed, and sometimes I just go for it and I go, okay, whoever gets it, gets it. And then maybe, more people get curious, like, oh, what is this joke about? And that does happen a lot. Like people get drawn in and actually learn about the news through satire. And I think I've heard a lot of satirists, like Jon Stewart and John Oliver, say, hey, we're not journalists, we're just comedians. But I think, honestly, the news has gotten so dark in recent years that there are a lot of people completely tuning out of the news, unfortunately. And the only way they get it is through entertainment. So I think there's actually something really important in finding a fun way to talk about what's going on.
Yeah, sometimes I get annoyed by hearing that from those types of figures because, as you say, they are a source of information for a lot of people. And like, there is a certain responsibility when you have that platform. And just by saying, I'm not a journalist, I'm a doctor, not a carpenter or whatever, like, it just felt like sometimes it's an abdication of your role.
It is. I mean, in general, I think I don't like it when comedians of any kind abdicate their responsibility for what they're talking about and how they're talking about it. Because if you're good at this, it means you're good at making a point in a clever way. And what point are you making, with your platform? I think that matters. And I think part of the reason people see maybe like The Daily Show or, Last Week Tonight as like their source of news sometimes is like, well, it's a fun way to learn about the news, but also, like, to the credit of some of those programs, and I think this is true at The Onion as well, they have fact-checking departments. So, like people who are taking comedy about the news seriously, they have researchers, they have fact checkers. They aren't just shooting from the hip any kind of joke about the news. They're making sure there's a factual premise that their jokes are based on. And that's how they build credibility on their own. And I try to do that with the Needling as well. So I bring my experience as a real journalist to that. And I really try to make sure that every headline and punchline in an article is actually based on something accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking before we got on the air here that you at one point were based in D.C. For the L.A. Times. You have a background having, worked at the Seattle Times as well. You won a freaking Pulitzer, and then made the pivot to satire. What was that journey like? Like, what drove your journey to where we are now at the Needling?
I think... it's like I really, those years are valuable that I was a reporter. But I think also, the last year that I was a reporter at the Seattle Times was really hard. Yeah, I did on the ground reporting about the Oso landslide for 2 weeks. And then a few weeks later, I was covering like a mass shooting at a school that probably people don't even remember at this point. And it's like, that was really dark, and I just personally, it was like, I think especially covering a school shooting, it was just like I reached a point as a reporter sometimes where I'm like, I am a reporter because I want to make the world a better place. I want to report this news and I want to see something get better. And that specifically was like one thing that I wasn't seeing get better. School shootings, mass shootings, it's like, we're just documenting this and like, why? Like, what's happening? So I felt a little bit at a loss for like what I could do as a reporter. And I ended up working at King County for a little bit, and then I started the Needling because I think I just had a lot of just real opinions backed up from years of being a reporter and then working in government. Because I think, when you're working at the Seattle Times or the LA Times, you're doing your best to be a professional, unbiased, objective as possible reporter. And the reality is, like, the whole time you are a person with real thoughts about what's going on.
Don't blow up my spot, Lex. Don't do that to me.
And it's like, I think I just had a lot repressed. And I'm also like a very like creative, imaginative person. So I just kind of combined all of that. And I think for a long time I'd wanted to do satire. And, it's like after doing all the hard things that it takes to get that far into journalism, I was like, I don't want to do this whole other thing in comedy. I'm going to create my own thing. So I just created my own publication and tried to, keep it up to my own standards. And it has been a compliment that people call it like our own local onion. Yeah, because it is modeled after that for the most part. But yeah, I think I personally wanted to find a more creative way to talk about some of these things because it was just personally depressing me a lot. And I think a lot of like just news consumers can relate to that. It's like, hey, I want to stay in the loop, but like, wow, there's a point where like I feel like all I'm doing is depressing myself and making myself more cynical and feel more helpless. And I do think that comedy has can help with keeping people informed in a way that doesn't completely tank their spirit. It's like, we can make fun of a politician that disappoints us in a fun way and like just really riff. Like we have one today ripping on Maria Cantwell and the comment section is fire. And it's like,
it has to do with a vote to authorize funding for Israel. And, that for obvious reasons, the comment section is blowing up.
Yeah. And last month, she also got lunch with Bibi Netanyahu. And honestly, like, it took me a while to figure out how to write about that because I was actually so personally disappointed, like just so angry. Like I could cry right now. Like I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. But you still feel it really deeply, Lex. I mean, you as a journalist, you've seen horrible things up close, and what we're watching in Gaza is a horrible loss of life, a miscarriage of what makes us human, just seeing children starving. And your anger and your hurt over that is something that you have to process. And then you have to think, okay, what am I going to do with that on a level that in the arena that I have, which is the Needling. I mean,
yeah, I can't believe I I'm like crying about it right now. But yeah, like I wanted to write about it, you know, about her, like even when I saw the photo of her with Bibi Netanyahu. But it's like sometimes it takes me a while to process things and even find a funny way to talk about it, because I'm just like, I'm not ready to laugh about it yet, or it's very hard for me to reach that because I'm just so actually like angry and disappointed.
But I have to say that one of the only ways I came across coverage of this arms sale issue was from you at the Needling. I mean, so people know that you're calling out Cantwell basically because she voted against the resolutions that Bernie Sanders introduced to block the sale of offensive weapons to Israel because of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. This was just a couple of days ago as we're taping. A lot of other Democrats, more than ever before, supported what Sanders was trying to do. Our other Washington Senator, Patty Murray, voted for blocking the sale of these weapons. And she said in a statement, "It is time to say enough to the suffering of innocent young children and families," basically saying she supports Israel, but her vote was meant to pressure Netanyahu to change course here. But not Cantwell. She voted no. So you are still bringing things to light that are important and bringing them across people's social media feeds in a way that is meaningful, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, and it's also like it's meaningful for me sometimes to talk about some of those things and then feel validated by, you know, our own community. I'm very proud of most Seattleites, I think, who see this as wrong, what's happening in Gaza.
Okay, so it's not easy to just pivot out of something that's really heavy, talking about what we're talking about with Gaza. So I'm just taking a big breath. And for you write and teach satire, and so you have to have kind of something in your head about what makes good news satire. I've heard it said that a joke has to have a premise that everybody can agree on that's like rooted in reality.
Yeah.
Is that right? I mean, is that kind of where you start from in a news satire sense?
Yeah, especially for news satire. It's like, okay, we're establishing that this thing is true, and then we're riffing off of it. Sometimes I get a headline that doesn't work because it's not riffing off something true. They're like, oh, I just made that up, that this business sucks. I'm like, you didn't base that on anything real? Like, that doesn't work.
Yeah,
that's just mean.
Yeah. I want to talk about current events related to satire, and that is that Stephen Colbert was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks are dubious that this was about money, like the studio says. They say it was related to needing federal approval for the Skydance Paramount merger. President Trump weighed in on that recently, saying, quote, "Everybody is saying that I was solely responsible for the firing of Stephen Colbert from CBS late night. That's not true. The reason he was fired was pure lack of talent. And the fact that this deficiency was costing CBS $50 million a year in losses, and it was only going to get worse. Next up will be an even less talented Jimmy Kimmel, and then a weak and very insecure Jimmy Fallon. The only real question is who will go first." And then he goes on to talk about show business and television and the business side of needing ratings, which the president has experienced because he was a television star. So, Lex, we're in a moment right now where famous comedians who make fun of the president are getting personally targeted by the president, expected and cheering on their firing. What do you make of this as a satirist yourself?
I mean, it definitely, got me in the heart the week that happened, because it's just like, wow, like I have been, admiring Stephen Colbert and The Daily Show, which is also owned by the same company that his show is owned by, since I was in high school. Like that's like most of my life. I've been like, these have been like legends and heroes of satire and comedy to me. So it was a very like, wow, Stephen Colbert. I love him so much. I've seen his show live. I've been into that in that beautiful theater, the Ed Sullivan Theater. And it's just like, I think it is like very piercing to go like, wow, a hero is getting taken down. And so is an institution. Like that late night spot has so much history. That theater has so much history. And it's like they don't care about any of it. So that is really daunting.
You know, I'm just curious, you live in the community where you are needling, to borrow the phrase, some of the most powerful people in Seattle and King County. Like, do you ever run into, like, you know, Bruce Harrell or Dow Constantine at an event and, you know, get a little like, oh, oops, hi, I
No.
just had you as a, you know,
I
as
do.
the target of my paper.
I do try to avoid it. Yeah, because I'm like, I'm sure you probably don't like me. I don't want to soften the blow. I meant what I said.
Does anybody in like a politician's office ever, or an elected leader's office, or a business office, like ever kind of try to, behind, you know, the scenes, get in touch with you to influence what goes on?
I think there have been local politicians that like the needling and share it. And, you know, it's kind of, it is nice, I think, when a personality or an agency or a company has enough humility to go ahead and play along with us a little bit. But I know that there have been some people in the past who are like, oh, I love the needling. And then they get ribbed at some point, and now they don't love the needling.
You don't hear
anymore.
from them anymore?
They don't like us anymore.
I mean, you know, I'm just happy that I'm not in any way, you know, a big enough target. I would be terrified about being made fun of in your paper because you're so good.
But I mean, I really like don't think, you know, we should make fun of anyone just for the heck of it. Like anytime I'm really making fun of someone, like I want it to be for a good reason, you know.
Do you follow the principle about punching up versus
Yes.
punching down?
Yeah. You always teach about that in the workshop as well. It's like we are going for jokes that are punching up, and if they're punching down, I don't even think that's comedy. It's just bullying, you know. So politicians are fair game because, you know, they stepped up to a role of authority and said, hey, I'm going to take care of this community. I'm going to let you put a ton of high expectations on what I can deliver to you. So when they don't deliver and they disappoint us, it's like, you had that coming. Like, don't act like you didn't have it coming. You knew what job you were taking. What were you expecting? Like, I don't.
Before we go, you are hosting a screening of Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. You know, one of my idols in journalism, I have to say, Ron Burgundy, one of the greats. So is this a documentary?
Yeah. The real Legend of Ron Burgundy. The real fake documentary of Ron Burgundy and him deigning to work with a woman.
Incredible hero.
Yeah.
Absolutely hero stuff. So this is at SIFF Cinema Downtown on Thursday night for their Talking Pictures program. Why Anchorman? I mean, did you get a chance to choose this one?
Yeah, I did choose it. And it's like, I just have a very interesting history with it. It's like, you know, how there's some movies you feel like you grow with. Like, oh, you watched it when you were young and then you keep watching as you get older. And you're like, wow, I keep learning or seeing new things. And Anchorman is one of those for me because it's like, you know, I've, you know, been a journalist and a satirist that makes fun of the news. So I still love that movie. And I think it's not just a classic comedy, one of the best comedy movies out there. It's like, it's actually very smart what it's saying underneath about men, about news, about women, what we got to do to get ahead, no matter what. So I just think it's a very smart movie on top of everything else.
Almost on a daily basis, when I see my name written down on a script for, you know, some introduction to something, I think of adding a question mark so that I can say,
I'm sure
I'm Libby Dankman.
At a broadcast, you know, network. Like, please, no one put that question mark at the end of my script.
Well, and, you know, sometimes in our credits, for example, they're all written down. I just, you know, run through them really quickly. And we had an old credit script in our system, and our editor, Gabriel Spitzer, had been sitting in for me. And I started to say, I'm Gabriel Spitzer on the air.
Oh, no.
I was like, yes,
it happens.
Ron Burgundy, again.
You just go into a mode.
Yeah, it's the Ron Burgundy continue. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Well, Lex Vaughn, I can't wait to, you know, see more from you. What's next for the needling? I mean, for you, like, what are your hopes and dreams for it in the future?
I think I've been saying I would do this for a while. It's a heavy lift. I think we would love to do a podcast, at least it's like I don't know how regularly, because it's a heavy lift to keep the needling going at a certain level of quality. But I think I've been talking with some people in like the local sketch community, and it's like there's a lot of very funny actors and comedians that have wanted to like kind of riff off of some of our stories and in a more live performance way. So we might be getting into some of that soon.
Incredible.
Yeah.
If you guys need to like, come and do some role research by like sitting in on some public radio shows, that would be amazing. You guys, Lex Vaughn, founder and editor of The Needling, Seattle's Real Fake News. Such a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. By the way, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.